Spartanburg, we welcome you to our second virtual candidates forum. Tonight's forum, the candidates for mayor of the city of Spartanburg. My name is Charles Mann, representing the Upstate Action Alliance. Our live stream is being managed tonight by the technology group New South. We have a little bit of housekeeping to dispense with. This forum is being recorded. The sponsor's unedited recording from the beginning to the end of the program will be made available in its entirety to the public, and this is in compliance with FCC regulations. This program is being live streamed to the UAA's Facebook page and YouTube page, the Spartanburg League of Women Voters Facebook page, and Siren's Facebook page. You can see it later on these sites. We are delighted to have Amy Wood of WSPA TV7 to serve as our moderator. We so appreciate her going above and beyond to serve this community, taking the time to help all of us become better educated in our voting choices. So now I will turn the evening and the program over to Amy. Thank you.
Charles, thank you so much, and to all the sponsors for including 7 News in this important, informative evening. We are so proud to be a part of this, and we hope that you get a lot out of this next hour and a half together. We, of course, have the sponsors that we were talking about at the top there mentioned very quickly. We want to dig into exactly who is part of this forum, who has planned it. It's been supported by several organizations. We're going to start with the Upstate Action Alliance, which was launched in 2020 as a response to the poor voter turnout that we saw in the 2019 election. I'm told the low voter turnout blocks effective participation in public life, according to this organization. This nonprofit, nonpartisan organization says it's dedicated to voter education, voter registration, and voter turnout with a focus on traditionally underrepresented groups. They believe that the upstate community is stronger when many voices are heard. Also behind this event and this evening is the League of Women Voters. They have empowered voters and defended democracy for over 100 years. The League is nonpartisan. They do not support or oppose political parties or particular candidates, and they are political in that they believe that democracy is not a spectator sport and that all citizens need to educate themselves and participate in a democracy. They have kept the name League of Women Voters because of the League's suffragist roots, but for well over 50 years, men have been included in the membership, you may know. The Spartanburg County League was founded back in 1975. Siren, the Spartanburg Initiative for Racial Equity Now, another group that has helped to put this evening together. They're a collective of parents, artists, journalists, neighborhood and nonprofit leaders, entrepreneurs, activists, and scholars. It was founded June of 2020 to help create a more equitable future through policy research, advocacy, journalism, and direct action. Siren exists in part to help amplify the voices that are often excluded from the conversations that shape this city, the country, and the state. Members come from all walks of life, and they are proud, they say, to include racial, ethnic, cultural, gender, and generational diversity. Alianza Spartanburg is a social impact network also involved tonight, comprised of collaborators that work to facilitate, encourage, and promote the inclusion of members of the Latinx community in improving the quality of life in Spartanburg County. Also tonight, the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, West Spartanburg Branch, the NAACP, chartered July 3rd of 1980. The NAACP was founded in 1909 and is the largest and most preeminent civil rights organization in the nation. They said the mission is to secure the political, social, and economic equality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination and ensure the health and well-being of all persons. Economic equality of rights to eliminate discrimination of all persons. All of these organizations are nonpartisan by nature, and they are focusing their efforts on getting people registered to vote and to provide timely information so that the voter has the chance to make an informed decision, because the voting starts and takes place on November the 2nd. We, of course, want you to understand what's going on with this forum. This is about the mayor's race, right? We have two candidates for the position of mayor in the city of Spartanburg, South Carolina. And this map here kind of gives you an idea of exactly what we're talking about, because the city and all the residents live in 6 council districts, each of them here represented by a council member. Council members serve staggered 4-year terms, and they are joined by the mayor to make up that 7-member city council. The mayor, who, like the 6 council members, has 1 vote on legislative matters and holds no veto power, is elected in a citywide election, also every 4 years. The mayor is the presiding officer at the city council meetings and participates in the debate as well as in voting. City council meets the 2nd and 4th Monday of the month at City Hall. That's 145 West Broad Street. The mayor may also call special meetings if they deem it necessary or if it's requested by at least 2 city council members. Now, the current mayor is Junie White. He was first elected mayor in November of 2009, you may remember, and was reelected in 2013 and 2017 after serving 1 term representing District 4 on city council. He is not running for reelection. The candidates this evening who will be with us and are the candidates in this race are Cathy McCabe. I'm so sorry. Cathy McCabe. And I knew that, Cathy. It threw me off seeing it written down. I've known you forever. And then Jerome Rice, of course, he's been on city council. Cathy, you've been city attorney, and I know you both in your opening statements get into your relationship with the city and your backgrounds and your accomplishments. But let's go over the ground rules really quickly, okay? The ground rules for this evening have been reviewed in advance by the candidates. Each candidate is getting 2.5 minutes for that opening statement. The order of this was determined by a quick coin toss that we had a little bit earlier. The candidates may choose to use all of their 2.5 minutes or not. That's up to them. They will be running a ticker on how much time remains underneath each of the questions. Candidates and the audience will be able to see this, and they will be having a countdown saying, for example, 1 minute remaining, 30 seconds remaining, 10 seconds remaining, and so on. And the candidate's time is up when the time is up. After opening statements have been made, the candidates will get questions that have been posed by the 5 sponsoring organizations that we described to you. In addition, questions were requested from the general public up to 5 o'clock on October the 5th, and the questions were pooled and vetted to avoid redundancy, and we will include as many as time allows. For each of the questions, each candidate gets 2.5 minutes to respond. In addition, each candidate will have the option for a 30-second follow-up after both candidates have initially spoken. At the end of the question period, candidates will be able to make a brief 2-minute closing statement. And again, candidates may choose not to use all of that time, and we are set to conclude at 8:30 tonight. So now let's begin the opening statements, and the coin toss was won by Cathy McCabe. So Cathy McCabe, you are up.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the organizations that provide for this forum tonight. I want to thank Amy for her moderation. I want to thank Jerome for his joining me tonight in this forum. And I particularly want to thank you, the residents and the citizens of the city of Spartanburg who are watching this tonight. I was the first full-time city attorney for the city of Spartanburg. I was the first female city attorney for the city of Spartanburg. I am Cathy McCabe, and I want to be your mayor. As the first full-time city attorney and the first female city attorney, I worked for the city for 11 years. And people say, Cathy, what did you do as the city attorney? Well, I'm not going to use my 2.5 minutes to tell everything that the city attorney does, but I will tell you some examples. Wrote contracts, reviewed contracts, wrote ordinances and resolutions, worked on development deals, handled employment issues, and the list goes on and on. For those 11 years of service with the city of Spartanburg, I became intimately familiar with our policies and our procedures and our government, and I became very familiar with the issues that are facing our city. I decided to adopt the city of Spartanburg as my home 38 years ago. And when I did that, and since I've been here, I have given much of my time, talent, and treasure to our city. I taught school for 12 years, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, and I've participated in many, many nonprofits, the Boys and Girls Club, the Girl Scouts Mountains to Midlands, the Upstate Foundation, Women Giving, and I'm currently serving as a trustee for the Spartanburg County Foundation and the Commissioner of Higher Education, and I am on the Mental Health Advisory Board. I understand the social issues that are facing our city. 4 years ago, I retired because my husband, Jim, had been retired for 6 years, and we have 4 children and 9 grandchildren. I wanted to spend time with them and smell the roses. But I told him then that I wanted to run for mayor. Why do I want to run for mayor? I'm here doing it now. It's because it's a pivotal time in the history of our city. Sleepy Spartanburg isn't sleepy anymore, and you need a mayor who can lead, a mayor that can be on the ground, a mayor that can be accessible, and a mayor that can communicate with its people. Because if we don't communicate with our people, it builds distrust, and without distrust, Spartanburg will never be the best it can be.
And the candidate's time is up. Cathy McCabe, thank you so much.
you.
Now we move on to Jerome Rice. You have 2.5 minutes, sir, to make your opening statement.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you for the sponsoring agencies as well. League of Women Voter, Upstate Action Alliance, West Side, NAACP, Siren, and Alianza Spartanburg. Thank you guys for having this, and Cathy, thank you for joining us as well. Again, I'm Jerome Rice, guys. I'm born and raised here in Spartanburg. I'm a proud product of School District 7. Just a little bit about me and my background and my upbringing. I was raised by Beatrice Rice, a superwoman, man. I tell you, she raised us as a single mom. I lost my father around the 2nd grade. He was tragically murdered here in Spartanburg. So that goes to public safety. That's something I'll talk about, I'm sure, a little later on. But again, I'm a proud product of District 7. Went to all the District 7 public schools from Cleveland to Whitlock to Spartanburg High School. Was a pretty good athlete. I earned a scholarship to play football at Wake Forest University. That's when I left, just for 4.5 years, actually, majoring in communication, television, and broadcasting. But upon my return, I actually didn't graduate from Wake. I ended up graduating from USC Upstate. I came home to work in communication. I was going to make my break in Atlanta, Georgia, during the '96 Olympics. But I stopped by Mary H. Wright to get a job until I could move on to Atlanta. Lo and behold, my 6th grade teacher, Dr. Judith Bazemore, was the principal at the time. She was working at Mary H. Wright, and she hired me. Not only did I work at Mary H. Wright, I also worked for the Boys and Girls Club. And this is what key. When I had worked for the Boys and Girls Club, I had the opportunity to take 25 or so young people to hear Dr. Martin Luther King's daughter speak at USC Upstate, USCS at that particular time. And she talked about how proud her father would be with the African Americans graduating from major universities, major colleges, throughout the country, moving on to big cities, Atlanta, Charlotte, New York, and making a break in the community. But one thing that hit and that always stayed with me was who was going to take care of home. She said that in her speech that night. And mind you, I had about 25 young people with me. And she said, who would take care of home? And that's something that has stuck with me. I told my wife, Shay, of 24 years that, but before we got married, I was not leaving Spartanburg. Spartanburg is home, and I'm here to take care of home. And that's why I'm running for mayor of Spartanburg. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerome Rice. And you will be getting the first question first, Mr. Rice. We are going to be talking about, in this first question, what you know about the city that you would like to serve. For instance, the racial ethnic makeup, schools, businesses, the neighborhoods, housing, and economics. What are the strengths and challenges that Spartanburg faces?
Oh, you mentioned everything there, Amy, and that's all Jerome Rice. Racial background of Spartanburg. Spartanburg is a minority city. I mean, we're predominantly minority. You talk about the educational piece. Again, I said I was a proud product of District 7, so I definitely went to all of their schools and gained a fine education, but also I work in District 7. I'm a transition specialist for Spartanburg High School, along with my wife who works in District 7. So we see the kids on a day-to-day basis. I told you my first job out of college was at Mary Wright Elementary School, working with young at-risk students that really sparked that niche in me to serve. It's all about service. I want to serve Spartanburg. I want to serve my home. I coach. I didn't mention anything about coaching. I have an opportunity to reach 125 young people on a daily basis, and just with the how you're doing, have a great day, but really impacting the lives of young men throughout this city. Again, everybody don't need what Jerome is giving. I've had two sons to come through the athletic program here at Spartanburg High School. I've had two daughters to come through the athletic program here at Spartanburg High School who were cheerleaders. So the housing piece, we rented as a young kid growing up on 218 Weldon Street, which is on the north side of town. We rented our house. I remember my mom trusting me to take the rent check up to Woodard's Funeral Home. We rented from Woodard's back in the 70s. And so moving from a renter and understanding the renter's responsibility and the landlord's responsibility, also now moving into a home ownership piece. My mom owns her house. Me and my wife own our house. My sister owns her house. So, I mean, again, and then third and last but not least, the economic piece. The economic piece as to what we are experiencing here in Spartanburg is something we need to talk about a little farther when it comes to equity and making sure everyone has a piece of the pie. Now, Spartanburg has moved through the recession back in 2009, and we've done a great job. But now coming out of COVID, it's something that we really have to look forward to, and something I would definitely love to speak to a little bit later. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Cathy McCabe, we of course want to give you an opportunity answering the same question, what you know about the city you would like to serve. For instance, the racial ethnic makeup, the schools, the businesses, the neighborhoods, housing and economics. What are the strengths and challenges that Spartanburg faces?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I applaud Spartanburg because Spartanburg is a city that has always been very benevolent. And in fact, we adopted and our city council voted to have public housing back in the 1930s because that was the right thing to do. But we know that that model of public housing also led to great poverty in our city. And our racial and ethnic makeup is a large number of minorities who are in poverty. And that is something that we have to discuss and that we have to deal with. I am trying so hard to understand the challenges ahead of that. As a Spartanburg County trustee, we issued the racial equity report in 2018, and in that report, it concentrated only on our city because that's only what we could focus on. We couldn't focus on the entire county. And along with the United Way and other foundations, we found that we have serious issues in economic mobility and health disparity and in our educational attainment. So what I have to say is I know that we have lots of challenges, but I know that we're working on those challenges. I know that we're working on them with the Spartanburg academic movement, that we're trying to figure out how we can help our kids be ready for first grade and be reading ready by third grade. I know with our housing and that we have neighbors that fear that they're going to lose their homes because the city is booming right now and the property taxes might go up and how that's going to affect them. Those are issues that we need to communicate and sit down as a group to talk about. And obviously, economically, we've got to have the infrastructure to support the economic development that we are bringing into the city. And as far as businesses, I support mom and pop shops. As having my private law practice and having to close a law firm, having 8 admins and paralegals that I needed to feed, I had to borrow $100,000, was a single mom with 2 kids in college and didn't have a paycheck for a very long time. Our mom and pop shops are hugely important, and especially the ones downtown that were with us the whole time when it wasn't really cool to be downtown. I understand them and I appreciate them being there and those storefronts being filled, because if it wasn't filled, our economic development would not be going as well as this now. We've got to make it for everyone in our city, everyone.
Thank you both. Does anyone want a follow-up? You do have that option to follow up.
Well, one thing, what is 30 seconds? One thing that was said, and I don't know, Cathy had some feedback in her volume, but I didn't know if I caught the piece with Spartanburg Housing Authority. That was one of the issues that was wrongly done back in the early 50s in Spartanburg, where we put so many housing projects in one area or one side of town, and then we put so many of our people of greater need in those housing authority, and so that created so much more poverty in those certain pockets of town, and that's what we're trying to come back from now.
And I'd like to respond to that. Jerome's absolutely right. That model was not a model that we locally committed to. That was a federal model that was came from the federal government, and we are as he said, we are having to come back from that. We now know the model is a totally different model, and you can see this all over what we're doing on the north side and the south side. That model is gone from the city of Spartanburg, and we'll continue to work to. If there's a better model that comes along that helps our people, we'll look at that too.
All right, thank you both. Moving on to the second question of the evening, we will take this question first to Cathy McCabe. What is your vision for community engagement as part of the decision-making process for the use of that once-in-a-lifetime $16.5 million the American Rescue Plan Act funds the city of Spartanburg, those monies that the city will receive? We would love to know what you would do with that and community engagement and decision-making.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. The first thing as the attorney, I want to make sure that we know what we can do with that money so that we use it properly. And that may take some time to figure out exactly what we can use it for. But yes, it's a blessing, a huge blessing in disguise for the city of Spartanburg. And I feel main part of my campaign is that communication and the public, our citizens, being part of every decision that we make in the city of Spartanburg. You go back and look at our history and look at decisions that were made on the south side years and years ago, it's because the public wasn't involved in that decision-making process. You look at what's happening on the north side and potentially in Highlands, it's because we found the formula that we have to have our citizens buy into what we do in their neighborhoods, and they'll stay and they'll prosper. And when the whole city, it's not north side versus south side versus east side versus whatever, we're in this together. But every decision-making process we need to have town hall meetings about that money. We need to have, even when money is decided to be used for something, there are people that will still say, I don't understand, and we need to continue to have that communication. That money could, it's for COVID relief. If it can be used for infrastructure, to help with infrastructure, to help us continue to grow our business downtown and continue for it to thrive downtown without putting more issues on our current structure, infrastructure, and taxes to go with that, that would be awesome. It would be great for us to help with our entrepreneurs if we can use some of that money, because economic mobility is the only way we're going to get our people out of poverty. And if we can use that money for helping those people, then our city is going to continue to thrive, and young families will stay here. And I think poverty is the root of a lot of our violence and other issues. So I'd like to see that happen as well. And as always, we're always looking for affordable housing. Many of our police officers and firefighters can't even afford to live in the city of Spartanburg. And with all the new apartments and all, we've got to take care so that we don't change the fabric of our community, of who we are. We want to thrive, but we want to take all the people that have been with us all these years and have them be part of that movement and decision making and how to spend those funds. It's a once in a lifetime chance for us. Thank you, Amy.
Cathy McCabe, thank you. And now to Jerome Rice, same question. What is that vision you have for community engagement as part of the decision-making process for use of that once in a lifetime $16.5 million, the American Rescue Plan Act funds that the city of Spartanburg is going to be getting?
Amy, I can remember when the North Side first started their vision, and how they had the charrettes over at the Green Street Baptist Church, and how they had posters on the wall. What would you like to see in Spartanburg? From the oldest of the old to the youngest of the young was involved with the North Side redevelopment efforts, and that's what I would love to see. Everyone involved with the redevelopment or the usage, of the usage of these funds that are here and that are coming down. Again, we do have to see exactly where we can use monies, how much is allocated for infrastructure, how much is allocated for broadband, how much is allocated for, any number of things. But again, it has to be the citizens' input. It has to be led by our citizens. So when I mentioned just the north side piece with the big charrette, I envision a major charrette at each side of town, all parts of town, where everybody's coming out, having their piece or their say to where Spartanburg goes from here, and what these monies are used to make Spartanburg that unique place. I totally agree with quite a few things that Cathy mentioned. Affordable housing here. I mean, I'm an educator. I know some of our teachers are trying to buy houses in the city. I know some of the police officers that are working here trying to buy houses in the city. We do need to make it more affordable. Shay and I was just talking just the other day about renting and how much rent was when we first rented our apartment before we right after we got married, and how much rent was then and how much it is now. And we have to continue to keep a look at that and then keep a hard lens on it. But again, that's where leadership comes in. That's where being accessible to the people. And I totally agree when Cathy said being accessible, but you're accessible 24/7. I mean, 24/7. We have emails, we have cell phones that make us accessible. And I'm talking to constituents, not only at council meetings, not only from a 9 to 5, but I talk to citizens about things that are going on in Spartanburg at your Walmarts, walking down the street, walking the rail trail over at the Y. So I totally agree. In the $16.5 million, I look forward to us using it wisely.
Jerome, thank you very much. Do either of you want to follow up to what one of the others said at this point? Because I also have a follow-up question that we could go with.
I'm good.
I think Cathy's trying to talk and she's muted. Go ahead, Cathy.
Oh, I just want to say it's a good problem for us to have that money to help our citizens.
Yeah.
And
so they asked me to kind of dig into this, and this will just be a quick little hit on this, but what ways do you see ARPA and that process facilitating additional equity-informed frameworks that could be embedded into the standard way that Spartanburg does business? Do you see any potential for that, either of you?
I'll take 30 seconds of it, where we continue to work in the department at the Department of Inclusion and Diversity and Inclusion at the city, where we strengthen that department, not with just one staff person, maybe multiple staff person that continuously goes out and work with minority businesses. We're trying to give them the capacity to take on some of these major constructions. There's a lot of construction going on around Spartanburg, and a lot of our local minority businesses can't afford or don't have the capacity to take on some of these jobs. But really enforcing them.
All right, thank you. And Cathy McCabe? We're going to unmute you. Hold on one second. Sorry. Go ahead.
The city has always been very good at trying to mirror in anything that we do our demographics. And I feel like that with this additional equity in helping minority businesses is a definite plus that we have to do. And I want to encourage along that line that our developers, we encourage them to use minority businesses. And they say to us, we can't use them because we don't have enough. We can't find them in that particular trade, or we can't do this. Well, if we use part of this money to develop those workers and those minority businesses, contractors and subcontractors, we'll have a list for them. Yep. And we can be encouraging in both the public and in the private developing world. And that, again, leads to economic mobility.
Thank you. All right, third question for the evening, and this will begin with Jerome Rice. Gun violence has really increased in the city this year. We've covered a lot of it on the news, unfortunately. What do you think are the causes for the violence, and how would you address the problem?
Amy, I'm glad you had that question. Well, I'm not glad because it's some sad things behind it. Actually, today there was a gunshot victim that went to one of the local elementary schools. I mean, he actually walked over to the local elementary school and they had to tend to him and call. And so the school was on lockdown. Again, we have to continue the conversation with our chief public safety officer, which is Chief Alonzo Thompson. He and I are in constant conversation about the things that are going on. Gun violence is prevalent. Shay and I was at a funeral just Sunday of a friend of ours that buried their child. My son, who's a senior at Charleston Southern University, had a teammate that was tragically murdered. He was from Florida, so his family is sending him to college from Florida to Charleston, South Carolina, and now they're burying him. It's not just a city of Spartanburg issue. It's not just a state of South Carolina issue. It's a national issue with gun violence. But I digress and take it back to the chief of public safety here, Alonzo Thompson, making sure we continue to talk with him about things that we can do better. Maybe environmental design, more lighting in hot areas where we're getting the reports of gunshots being fired. We know there are certain parts of town where you may have more incidents of gun violence, and making sure we have community policing. That's something that goes back with Tony Fisher, our former chief of police. We talked about community policing where the police officers are not just riding through neighborhoods or riding through areas, that they're out on foot walking, engaging with the citizens, engaging with the neighborhood, making sure they know people and building relationships. Also technology, that there's been some things mentioned about shot spotters. Whenever there's a gunshot that goes off, this camera automatically clicks on it. That we're not saying it could possibly catch the person that may be firing the shots, but also it could catch a car that may be speeding away. It could catch people running to a certain area, and we would at least know which way to go. Making sure our citizens understand the process of when they call 911. We've had several neighborhood association meetings where our citizens don't understand the process of what goes on when you actually call 911. So the final answer, and I know my time is out, but to stay in constant communication with the chief and making sure we're using the best practices to help alleviate this problem.
Thank you. Cathy McCabe, same question. Gun violence has increased this year in the city. What do you think are the causes, and how would you address the situation?
Well, I think the root cause of a lot of violence and gun violence itself is poverty. That poverty leads to despair, and despair leads to actions of people wanting to try to get out of it, whether it's joining a gang, whether it's robbing a bank, or whatever. It leads to despair. And so I think we've got to continue to work at poverty. The other things I'm going to talk about are really just Band-Aids, but we've got to work on poverty because I think that's the root of much of our violence. I also think that our policing is the most important thing that we can provide our citizens. I have gone door to door. I've been in many forums, and everybody wants more police. They want their neighborhood police. They want the neighborhood police to be there so that the kids can get to know them. And you know, the truth of the matter is when the police aren't around, that's when bad things happen. And I know that we're with the national climate with police and defunding the police. There are people that don't want to be those servants anymore. But I think we've got to be really creative. We've got to be really creative and go to places and target places where we can get some of these police officers that are in places that they're unhappy, and see if we can recruit some of them here, because I know we need them here. We need more people on shift. And we need to make sure that our rec centers are being used for our youth. I'm going to tell you, these rec centers, when we took them back from the county, we have spent a lot of money building them, programming them, and I think the programming, we need to review some of it. Some of our centers have become more like event centers. We need our kids to be in safe places after school. We need them on the weekends. They need to be with mentors. And there was even an article in the paper this morning that said with the gun violence, there's because guns are available. Guns can be found. Well, I know in my rec centers, they'll be safe and they'll be getting good mentoring. So I want to look at that as well. I think those three things we have to continue to work on the violence that we are having here in the city of Spartanburg.
Jerome or Cathy, would either of you like to have a little more time, Jerome, to respond to what Cathy said, or vice versa after you speak?
Just one piece, but I would have to disagree with Cathy on that. The poor people are the violent ones. You know, just because you're in poverty, that doesn't mean that you're more prone to violence. One thing we have noticed here in the city is that a lot of the violence that goes on in our neighborhood are from folks on the outside, not the people that live. And I say our neighborhood because I represent District 5, which is Holland, Norris Ridge, and with that's a hot place in the city. But we have noticed that a lot of the incidents with gun violence happen with people that don't live there. It's people from the outside coming in. We have to make sure all folks have homes and feel more a part of the community because they are homeowners. So I would disagree with that poverty piece.
Cathy?
Well, I can say poverty does put people in despair, and it does lead to kids that are not monitored looking elsewhere to find a way out when they can't figure out how else to get out of poverty. And I'm not saying that it's just a poverty is the reason for violence. I'm saying that's one of the reasons that I think that it's a cause for violence. And you know, no neighborhood should have to experience violence. And
thank you both. All right, we're going to move on to question number 4 for the evening. This one will be starting with Cathy McCabe on this question. Since the 1950s, Spartanburg has been a home for immigrant and refugee communities, and we attract a high rate of foreign direct investment. How do we leverage that in a global future?
I think that we have been so fortunate to be home for immigrants and refugee committees. The Germans have been here. That's one of our largest populations. We've got French, we've got Latinx. We are so blessed to have a wide variety of people, because when we have different people, we learn different things, and we learn that we are not by ourselves, and that we don't have the magic wand for everything. The more people that are at any table, the better off our community is going to be. I think that it's great that we have these immigrants and that are here, because foreigners know that they're accepted here in the city of Spartanburg. I don't know how many European countries or cities have asked to be our sister city here in Spartanburg, because when they come here, they're welcome with open arms. They find community here, they find acceptance here, and I think, you know, just BMW for an example, leveraging and going back over to Germany and talking about us. I had somebody tell me not long ago that when they were over there in Germany, that somebody came up and they found out they were from Spartanburg and said, "Oh, that's where the BMW plant is." And those are the things that when they find out the quality of life here, the welcome nature of it, and our interest in growing investments, they'll bring in people over here. They'll come over here and they'll find that we are a place that they want to live and invest. I don't think we leverage it enough. I don't think that we take trips over there to Europe and take some of our people of foreign investors that are living here now in our country to go over and have forums in different parts of Europe to bring people over. And the same token, we have all these colleges here in town, and a lot of these kids are going over to Europe and visiting other schools over there. And I just think it's a great way for them to also talk about what their Spartanburg is like, what we have here, and why they need to come invest here. Because those young students coming out of college are going to be looking for jobs, and they may very well be more interested in an international type job than they will be a local job, but they'll still call Spartanburg home.
Cathy McCabe, thank you. Jerome Rice? Same question. Since the 50s, Spartanburg has been a home for immigrant and refugee communities, and we do attract a high rate of foreign direct investment. We've covered that over the years. How do we leverage that in a global future?
I think again, I am a graduate of the Raleigh Institute of the Diversity, which is held at Furman University back in 07, 08, somewhere in there, where I graduated from that cohort of a class. And again, Cathy makes a great point where you have BMW here in Michelin and all these different companies that are international that have come over. I was not aware until I really took the class, the exact, not the necessarily exact number, but just so how many people that have moved to this area because of those companies and their investment here in the local economy. Again, I work at Spartanburg High School, and we have a diverse group of students here at Spartanburg High School that we see on a daily that are coming in. My wife works at Spartanburg High School now, but she worked at Dorman as well, where they had a huge Russian population. So that goes to show about how welcoming we are of a community. I mean, to have these kids to work together, to play together, to study together, and learn the different cultures that are so inviting. One thing we put on in Spartanburg that is just the biggest event for me, and my favorite event is the International Festival. Mm-hmm. It's to see all the different cultures. I don't have to leave Spartanburg to see it. I can see it right at Burnett Park on one Saturday afternoon, and I can visit at least 50 or so different countries on that particular Saturday, and all of them are somewhere within our community. We do need to utilize it and invest into it more. But again, Spartanburg is just such a welcoming community, and you can really see that from the people that we draw. Again, I have to speak on just my experience from the diversity class and truly the International Festival, where you see all of these cultures going to work right here in Spartanburg. And again, we have such a great time, and the kids really interacting and learning about the different cultures. So I think it's outstanding.
Thank you. Cathy, any desire to respond with your optional response, 30 seconds? We're going to open her mic once again. Sorry about that.
That's okay. When I was talking about direct investment, foreign direct investment, we usually think of the big corporations, the big industries. But I want to remind you, just walk downtown Spartanburg and look at some of our restaurants. They are so diversified. I mean, we've got Thai, we've got Mexican, we have Italian, and these people are people that have decided to stay here in the city of Spartanburg because they loved it and because they could open a storefront, they could make a living, and they could make a difference for their family and for our community. So it's not all about the big things, it's the little things in life that makes us happy. True. And if you miss International Festival where you can eat your way through, you can eat your way through downtown Spartanburg too.
Jerome, anything else? Are you good?
No, that's great.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to question number 5. This question will go to Jerome Rice first. This question goes as follows. We are focused on fostering greater diversity and inclusiveness in the city of Spartanburg, they write. We know our diversity is one of our great strengths. How will you ensure we continue to move in this direction? Again, Jerome Rice first.
Diversity. That diversity doesn't always mean race. It truly doesn't. But let's look at the obvious. There's been only white men that have occupied the seat of mayor here in Spartanburg, with the exception of Mayor Talley. And Mayor Talley is a close friend of mine, a mentor of mine. He was a former educator. He was a coach. He was also coach mayor at the same time when he coached over at Walford. So, and I just mentioned early on about Spartanburg being a majority minority city. And again, if you look at the two candidates here, Jerome is the only one of color that is running for mayor of Spartanburg, and that's just one of the simple things that we can look at. But also, I think our council plays a tremendous part in this. And one thing we did, probably out of the 12 years I've been on council, I was so proud of the reconciliation and unity resolution that was passed earlier last year, guys. That was a tremendous effort on behalf of council to put that to the staff. That there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of executive sessions where things were said and things were added and things were taken out. But we came to a conclusion to where we apologize for some of the past ills that people that sit in the seat that we sit in now today did to Spartanburg. I made mention early on about the housing authorities and the housing projects in Spartanburg. That was a bad move. Yes, it was done by the federal government, but we allowed, and some of our forefathers of Spartanburg benefited from that move. So for this council to have that unity resolution passed and read off by each member was a tremendous undertaking and something that we can look forward to moving. Guys, it can go as simple as putting the mural in the middle of the street, Black Lives Matter, over on in front of Church Street. That was major. That was major. That we understand that one group of people are hurting right now from some things that are going on socially. And they wanted to, not only did they pick it, but they put the sign, and it was done by different artists here in Spartanburg. So we're doing some great things in Spartanburg, and we can only move this needle forward if Jerome Rice is elected mayor.
Now to Cathy McCabe, we want to see what you have to say on this. We are focused on fostering greater diversity and inclusiveness in our city. They write, we know our diversity is one of our great strengths. How will you ensure we continue to move in this direction?
Well, I believe that we need to, one of the things we need to do is make sure that our boards and commissions, our employment mirrors the demographics of our city. That is a very important piece that the city of Spartanburg did that back in the 1970s to make sure that our community had trust in its government, that it was people that they could go and look at our boards and commissions and at our employment and see people that look like them. And I want to make sure that we've continued that process since I've left and since I've retired, because I think it fosters trust, and it any organization, I don't care if it's a huge organization, if you don't have diversity at your table, then you are not being the strongest organization you can possibly be. And so I think that we need to make sure that we continue that. I also think that, Jerome wants to talk about diversity in terms of only one Black mayor. Well, there's never been a female mayor, and females have you should have a chance as well at being mayor. Because women bring something different to an organization. They bring a different light, a different reflection, an attention to detail, and passion and compassion. I'm not saying that men aren't, but I just think that women tick differently. And I think we also need to continue our diversity and inclusiveness in all arenas of our community. And the only way we're going to do that is we're going to have to communicate with each other. We're going to have to show each other that we really do understand you, and that if I can't walk in your shoes, then I'm going to try to figure out how I can most understand you, whether it's attending a racial equity institute or just sitting down and being with people that are different from you. Our city has fostered it. We need to continue to foster it. We need to make sure that we continue to save our fabric in our city, that we don't lose our neighborhoods, that we worked on all of this together to make sure we continue to move forward with the strongest our Spartanburg as we can.
Cathy McCabe, thank you. Jerome Rice, any interest in a 30-second follow-up?
No.
Okay. We're going to move on to question 6 for the evening. This question goes first to Cathy McCabe. Climate change is impacting Spartanburg residents. How should the city mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change, particularly in communities of color? That's the question.
I think, first of all, education is a key part of it. I can tell you right now that communication is beating on door after door and talking to people. Communication in our city is something that our constituents and our citizens are so thirsty for somebody to talk to them. So first of all, talking to them about how it is impacting that climate change is real. Sharing the information about climate change and how it is definitely something that can affect our community. Besides doing that with climate change, I think that we can teach them after it's accepted there's climate change, ways that we might be able to mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change. And I don't know that particularly in communities of color, if it is different from anywhere else, what climate change, how it affects our lifestyle and how it affects our life. It's obvious that it is changing the lifestyles of everyone, the impact of the weather and the change in the heat and the temperature and all of that. So I don't know that it's just particularly for communities of color. For all of us to understand it and understand how we mitigate it before it really catches up with us.
Thank you, Cathy McCabe. And same question, Jerome Rice. Climate change is impacting Spartanburg residents. How should the city mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change, particularly in communities of color?
I mean, as far as climate change, I just watched a documentary about climate change and the polar ice caps in Alaska and Greenland and places like that, and how it is changing. And I forget exactly how many years, but the ocean level is steadily increasing. But how does that affect Spartanburg? I mean, it affects Spartanburg, but one thing I really want to say is that we need to keep our green spaces available. I think someone told me, I know someone mentioned about oxygen and things of that sort. Being a football coach, we notice the climate constantly. Guys, and there are some things that are happening with hotter summers, hotter fall weathers, and now we're out and we have the name of it escapes me. The devices that we actually have out on the football field to measure the climate, to measure the humidity in the air, and making sure that it is at least safe for us to practice that day. I mean, sometimes you would have to take so many breaks, or sometimes you would actually have to stop practice altogether because of the heat in the air. But there are things that we can do, and one thing with this climate change, my friend Harold Mitchell years ago talked about solar energy and utilizing that in some of our neighborhoods that could truly benefit from it. Making sure we use solar energy to impact the energy piece. So climate change is something we constantly have to work on, something we constantly have to be aware of and where it's headed. Again, I spoke earlier about going with the science. I truly believe that the professionals can lead us in the right direction and making sure we understand exactly what is happening and communicating that to our citizens of Spartanburg.
Okay, thank you. Either of you want to follow up? Cathy, would you like a follow up, or are you good to move on to the next one? You good? Okay. All right. Our next question impacts a big issue. We're going to go to candidate number 2, Jerome Rice, first. What are your plans to address the homelessness crisis in the city of Spartanburg?
Amy, as you see, I shook my head in agreement when you said the homelessness crisis in Spartanburg. I mean, homelessness in Spartanburg, it affects everyone. all sides of town, all facets in the community. We had a report that was given just the other day about the homelessness. 25% of homeless people are veterans. 20% of the homeless are children. That's something that truly affects us in the schools. When we have children that are homeless, we have special programs for them where we could to make sure that they receive special services. Also, 25% of our homeless are just unhoused long-term homeless people. A lot of it is dealing with mental health. A lot of it is dealing with substance abuse, and so there are some things that we're working on. We actually have a task force that was formed by the city that we are a part of, and I mentioned the city of Spartanburg. And one major thing, before I forget, one major thing we did when we opened up the Dr. T.K. Gregg Community Center on the north side of town. Northwest Center was available. And we had someone to come to us and offer an opportunity for the homeless. And so now we have the Opportunity Center at the former Northwest Recreation Center, somewhere where I volunteer often. And I mean, it's a day shelter where the homeless can come in, get a shower, they can get breakfast, they can receive mail. They can have the wraparound services there. There's a nurse practitioner there. There's a mental health counselor there. There's a DSS worker there where they can receive benefits. I mean, and it's key to where we can have our homeless people actually receiving mail. They can actually apply for a job online on the computers there and get the information. They can get the return call to the Opportunity Center. So it's a great opportunity of just something small that we have done, but we have Spin that works on homeless. We have the soup kitchen that work with the homeless, and you see as you drive around Spartanburg, everybody trying to give a helping hand to the homeless, where some folks just pop up on the corner just to feed the homeless. It's something that again, that's not just a Spartanburg problem. That's another national problem, but it's something that we see occurring more so here than a lot of our neighboring cities.
All right. Thank you, Jerome Rice and Cathy McCabe. Again, the same question. What are your plans to address the homelessness crisis in the city of Spartanburg?
Well, it is increasing. I can't go anywhere without somebody talking to me about the homeless, because they're homeless everywhere in the city of Spartanburg. And I know that the Opportunity Center provides caseworkers and some wraparound services for our homeless. But to be honest with you, the Opportunity Center is on the furthest northern border of the city of Spartanburg. And so we have homeless that are in the downtown part that can't get there. There's not transportation. And then we have those that leave from the soup kitchen and walk through the north side. And so I am interested in a couple of things. One is I'm interested in how we can make the Opportunity Center more accessible. For instance, I'm going to visit Columbia. If I get the opportunity to serve you as mayor, I'm going to visit to Columbia, where they have a one-stop shop, where they have caseworkers. They have one place that they all go to. They're all fed there. And they have a transition team that helps them with their mental illness, and these are our veterans. These are people that served our country honorably, many of them, just like Jerome mentioned, but they have mental illnesses, or they've got addictions, and they work them through that process. And they have a transition set up where they actually start transitioning them in a hotel room, where they can start getting a job, where they can start taking care of themselves and feed themselves. We've got to look at that type of thing, because it's not going to go away. The homelessness is not going to go away. I know that we have a litter patrol now of homeless people that we are getting them to go and work for a litter patrol here in the city of Spartanburg, and that's all great and wonderful. But we've got to get to the root of their issues, so I will visit that center. Another thing I would want to do is, I've heard through the years that people that get out of prison in Columbia are given tickets to the city of Spartanburg, bus tickets. And the reason for that is because we are a benevolent society here. We do have tents popping up to feed our homeless and so forth. that needs to be investigated. And then the last thing, in Europe, they have a system where they are providing 3-wheel bikes where they have enough room to store their equipment in it. They have pads that they all ride their bikes up to at night. They have electricity, and at least our policemen know where they are. And they're not in doorways, and they're not frightening people in the parking lots. And that way we can start working with them to transition them as well. So those are some of the ideas that I would like to do.
Would either of you, Jerome, would you like to in any way respond to what Cathy had to say there?
No, I totally agree. But I mean, she mentioned the Litter Heroes program, and what the Litter Heroes program is the homeless people that are hired through the city to go and actually get a wage for picking up litter around the city. So that's one program. We have the homeless court where Judge Erica McJimsey, when a homeless person is to appear before her, we have a special homeless court so we can identify this guy, this person, and actually work with him through the homeless court situation. Green Street Missionary Project for the homeless women. There's countless programs that we are working on, and we just have to continue and making sure everybody's at the table discussing this issue of homelessness.
Time is up on that one. And Cathy, any response
No,
further?
I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're moving on from homelessness to another important situation. Name this is going to go to Cathy first, Cathy McCabe first. Name 3 problem areas you've identified in the city of Spartanburg and your plans to improve or correct them.
Okay. The number one problem that I've identified is that we are thirsty for an active, accessible mayor, somebody that our people, our citizens can get in touch with and speak to on a regular basis. There is so much change going on in the city of Spartanburg, and there are people that just don't understand what that change means for them and how it's going to affect them in their life. And so obviously one of the things I want to do is try to bridge that communication gap, being mayor, having office hours, being able to go to neighborhood association meetings, being able to have town hall meetings. Another problem that I think we have in the city of Spartanburg that we need to work on is that we need to, economic development needs to be strategic, and we need to be thoughtful about our economic development. There are many times that businesses want to build right outside the city limits because they think it's cheaper for them to build outside the city limits because maybe the requirements aren't as stringent in some of the areas. And what happens is that it sometimes it backfires. We've had instances where they wanted to build to county code, and then when they wanted to be annexed, our fire suppression system and hoses wouldn't even fit in their system, so they had to go back and redo those systems. And so we've got to be smart and strategic about our economic development, because if we join together with the county and a certain area right outside the city limits and work together, it'll be more cost effective. And the third thing I think I've identified in the city that is people are talking about is that we do have a need for more police. There's clearly more need for police. There are people that call me and have talked to me about hearing the racing of cars going down East Main Street. And the reason they're doing it is because there's not an officer on duty out there. And so we've got to continue to support our law enforcement and improve that. And then the last thing, I know you said 3, but the 4th is we have a litter problem, a severe litter problem. And it's detracting from the beauty of our city, which is a special, special place.
Name 3 problem areas that you've identified in the city of Spartanburg and your plan to improve or correct them.
Well, it's basically what I'm running my campaign on. I want to be a mayor for public health. I want to be a mayor for public safety and a mayor for public education. I say public health. I mean, again, we do have to fully come back from COVID. I mean, COVID has crippled a lot of cities. We have stayed afloat here in Spartanburg, and we're still moving as much as we can. But COVID still impacts us. I mean, it still impacts us on a daily basis. Where you have some of the businesses not being able to receive certain things that are supposed to be coming to them because of layoffs or folks not on the job, or people not working. So when you talk about the public health piece, and that's paramount, that we get people back to work, we get everybody on a regular schedule, we get kids back to school, we get teachers back to work, and not on Zoom and video, and we get our citizens vaccinated, so we can truly fully recover. We talk about public safety. Public safety, I mentioned that early on. I told you guys that my father was killed early on in my life, and I was raised by a single mom, and that affected us. And so we're still having gun violence now. I'm talking about my father being killed back in the 70s, and we're and it's 2021, and we're still talking about gun violence. That's something that we have to address, and we have to put some needed energy into it, as well as funds. We with hiring a more police officer, we gave the police a raise last year. Matter of fact, council agreed upon a raise that was retroactive. So we went back and paid them for time that they had already put in, and so we are very proactive in trying to recruit more police officers, and making the wage more competitive with other neighboring cities. And third but not least, the educational piece. The educational piece is paramount. Again, I work in education. My wife works in education, and that hello family is truly a key to us moving the needle forward. Health disparities, and my time is up.
Thank you so much for wrapping up on your own. All right, we have that opportunity, Cathy, for the 30-second follow-up. Anything you'd like to add?
Well, I'd just like to add that, again, law enforcement is hugely important, as he said, and we need to find part of the issue or finding officers that want to serve after the national climate. And as I said, I think we need to spearhead and actually do some target recruiting in areas where people wanted to defund the police so they could come to Spartanburg and help serve us. We've got to improve and increase our law enforcement for sure.
And Jerome, anything to follow up there?
The last piece I wanted to get in was the public health piece. When you read the Spartanburg indicators, the indicators reflected that if you lived on a certain part of town, if you lived on a certain part of town, your life expectancy raised by 17 years. So if you lived on my side of town in my district, I was the indicators will show that my life expectancy was 17 years less than someone that lived over on Andrews Farm or somewhere on the east side. And that's a health disparity that is alarming, and we need to address these things.
Okay, thank you. Question number 9 kind of tackles into topics that you guys both have kind of dipped into, and this will give you a chance to talk a little bit more in depth about it. The question is going first to Jerome Rice, and it goes as follows: what would you do to ensure that housing improvements and construction are equitably placed throughout the city? So Jerome, tackle that one for us.
Equitably placed throughout the city. That's a mouthful. You're right. That's a little more difficult. I mean, easier said than done. I mean, we want development, and every development that comes to Spartanburg. One thing council has done in the past and will continue, if I'm mayor, that we will always actually the developer to put a affordable piece in there. We got to have some affordability. Now we know developers have to make their money, and they're going out and taking a chance, and they do their due diligence on the particular property. But if they're ever looking and if they're receiving incentives from the city, we will definitely demand that they have a piece in the contract to where a certain percentage of the units or the development would be earmarked as affordable. So that's one way that we make things more equitable, making sure our police officers, you know, who we are short with having and recruiting here in Spartanburg, making sure when the school district goes out and recruit teachers that they can come to Spartanburg and buy a home in a nice, thriving neighborhood, that nurses that are working at Spartanburg Regional, when they move here, can actually live in a nice, thriving neighborhood, safe neighborhood. And one other thing we haven't hit on, that we are a college town, and we lose so many college students to other cities and other states, because they're leaving Spartanburg because of the equitable housing market, and that's another key interest that we have to really touch on. And again, losing that talent that we have here, that are graduating from Wofford's and Converse and Upstate and community college and on. But we need to make sure we're retaining that talent here, and by all means necessary, and making sure that they have options available to them that is equitable.
Thank you. And Cathy McCabe, what would you do to ensure that housing improvements and construction are equitably placed throughout the city?
Well, I believe that developers need to understand the community that they're coming into. They need to understand who we are in Spartanburg. They need to understand that depending on where they're going in the city of Spartanburg, an equitable housing is different for different parts of our neighborhood. And I hate to say that, but it's true. Affordable housing for the South Side or Highlands might be totally different from the North Side. And so we've got to educate our developers when they come in that we are a city that is concerned about keeping its people and keeping all of its people. And as a result of that, the developers need to understand that we are going to require, as a council and as mayor, are going to require, if there's money invested by the city of Spartanburg, that there's going to have to be a percentage of affordable housing. But I also think that there are ways that we can encourage developers to include a piece of affordable housing. For instance, I think that it would be almost a privilege and an honor for some of these new apartments that are coming up to have a police officer, be affordable enough for our police officers to be there, so that they can bring, have a car and in the apartment complex, and at the same time develop relationships with the young children that live there, and that there could be a benefit for us having those conversations with private developers. We've got to be sure that our people, all of our people, feel like that they have an opportunity to find a house, and an affordable house. But at the same time, when you have the yin and the yang of new business coming in, new construction coming in, new industry coming in, the price of housing goes up. So we have to, besides incentivizing with money from the city, we've got to carry that message of what this city is and who this city is and what we expect for people that come into our city to develop our city, that we want them to be.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to take a moment here to make sure we touch on a topic that came up in the city council race discussion. It was very much the topic of the night, which is transportation. And you guys have talked about, for example, development coming to the county. And then people on the city council debate were talking about the workforce, the potential workforce that could be trained within the city, but they cannot get to the jobs. Not to mention, you both are talking about pulling stakeholders in, but sometimes stakeholders can't get there because of transportation. So let's talk a little bit, starting with Cathy McCabe. What is your solution to Spartanburg's transportation problem?
The solution is that the city and the county are going to have to work together to find a way of creating a transportation system that is suitable for our citizens to be the workforce that supports the businesses out in the community. And it's going to have to be more than a van plan. It's going to have to be a comprehensive plan that the city and the county sits down and discusses and tries to figure out how we can support support the industry with our citizens. The industry that's coming here is industry that wants to have skilled workers. And the two reasons that people don't have jobs is number one, daycare issues, and number two, transportation. And so until we find a time to sit down and strategically plan how we're going to help support our residents so that they can get to their jobs, we're just going to be shortchanging businesses that come here and shortchanging our residents. If they can get to their jobs for the first few years, they'll be able to buy their transportation. But until then, we've got to somehow support that and foster that. And I don't think our bus system can do it. It might be multiple bus systems, but I know other cities are looking at this between the county and the other cities and counties are looking at this to come up with a master plan. And that might be something that some of that money that's coming in would be well spent on for us to discuss.
Thank you very much. Jerome, what is your transportation solution? How would you improve transportation for citizens in the community?
Amy, we have already started the conversation about expanding the transit system in the city of Spartanburg. I have a good friend of mine, Drake Jackson, that works at Dollar General out in Jonesville. And we know Jonesville at one point, not Jonesville, but Dollar General was hiring folks with $17 and $18 an hour wages. And that's a good wage here in Spartanburg. So, but the transportation was an issue. So obviously we have to expand the routes first and foremost, as well as the times. I mean, we're already in conversation about weekend hours of transportation, along with expanding the routes to leave the city of Spartanburg and to go out into the county. I mean, how many more could be working at a BMW if they had transportation? How many more could be working at a Dollar General if they had transportation? And again, to make our economy a better place here in the city, because we do have those working individuals. Now, I mean, it's as simple as that. But and we are already in the process of talking with the county. We have had some preliminary conversations with the county. We all are aware of the new city county municipal building. We will have some of the same offices within that building, and that's a few years off. But those conversations are already in the works, where we're talking to county council on a regular, as well as they're conversing back with city council and what we could charge our city manager and the county administrator to do, and what we see moving forward. So again, it definitely starts with expanding the hours and definitely expanding the routes to leaving the city and going more outside. I heard you did mention a piece about the vans and doing more than just a van. The van was a pilot program to where we had a group of people, a group of citizens in a particular area in the city that actually caught the van that took them to work and would bring them back home. It was just a pilot just to see how long that would work. And you're totally right. If you go to a job and work for a couple of years, you can't afford a car. But we also know that in these cars,
time is up, unfortunately. I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Kathy, did you want to respond at all?
Yeah, I do want to respond to that. I mean, the bus is going outside the city into the county to certain places and expanding the program. I don't think that's the solution. When I read in the newspaper that we have citizens right here in the city of Spartanburg, that it takes them 3 hours to go to the grocery store to get their groceries and come back home on the bus, we can't dilute that transportation system to help in an initiative to take people outside into the county. We've got to come up with a plan that works better for those that are going outside the county, and we still need to work a better plan for the people that are having to use the bus system inside the city of Spartanburg. That gentleman couldn't bring ice cream home.
All right, and then really quickly, I'm gonna, if you can be as quick as possible.
I didn't get a chance to.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's just that I also mentioned that we were going to extend the times. so that the route would be a little bit more cohesive and run together. We all heard about the gentleman having to spend hours on the bus. I totally disagree with that, with him having to spend as much time as this. So I did mention extending time, and so not just an hour in between routes, maybe 30 minutes in between routes, but we also have to look at the cost of the initial program as well. So I totally agree that someone on the bus for 3 hours didn't make much sense.
Okay. Really quickly, I just want to, as brief as you can be, what is your position with regard to COVID-19 and masks and vaccines and the position the city should take on those topics? Cathy, please, you go first.
Okay, I definitely believe we need to protect each other. I believe in vaccines. I'm vaccinated. My husband's vaccinated, had his booster, and my grandson is vaccinated. And I believe that the city should follow the CDC requirements or suggestions by being the mentor and being the one to set the tone for the city of Spartanburg on masks. And as mayor, my position would be that we should follow the CDC guidelines in our city facilities. I know that we have issues with our youth when they're playing sports and whether they should wear their masks. But I think we definitely should set that tone, and I am definitely for people getting vaccinated, and particularly in the Black and brown community where people were so hesitant to get vaccinated. I think our church leaders are doing a very good job at telling their constituents and telling our citizens how important it is. But we also have some council members that had COVID and were anti-vaccine, and they need to share their story as well. The more we can talk about how it's affected us and the more we can unify with one another, the better we're going to be.
Jerome Rice, how do you feel about masks, vaccines, and the city?
I think I mentioned it early. Me and my wife are Dr. Fauci fans. Me and our children are Dr. Fauci fan. I have a granddaughter that's 13. She's fully vaccinated. So we truly believe in the science. When Dr. Lamadosi come by and speak to the council for updates when the COVID was really bad, I mean, he was telling us that the percentage, it was 90+% of people on the ventilator were unvaccinated people. So I mean, that's just being a good neighbor. Why else would I not? I think our city manager is doing a good job with conveying that to the staff at the city. We are requiring everyone that comes into city property or city offices to wear masks. Again, Cathy did hit on the piece with recreation. So at our centers, it may be some a little difference there because the kids actually participating in athletics. But again, it's paramount that we follow this and try to get out of this pandemic. And it's paramount that we all continue to follow the CDC guidelines and do what we can to help our fellow citizens here in Spartanburg.
All right, we're going to go to our last question of the evening. We're going to start off with Cathy McCabe. What is the last book you read that influences how you would wield public office?
A book I read a long time ago, I read all of his books, was by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He was a Russian author, and one of his books was called Cancer Ward. And he actually had to leave Russia because they were trying to kill him for his telling the truth about what was actually happening in Russia in regards to lots of things. But in this book, in the cancer ward, and in this story, he tells about the people that go into the cancer ward and the government's treating them. And when they know that the person is not going to survive, they give them enough drugs to get them out so that they are not counted as a responsibility of the government. That when they died at home. And so the government's numbers looked really, really good. And that book stuck with me my whole life because we are supposed to be a government that's transparent. We're supposed to be a government that our constituents can depend on and that can trust. And if you don't have that transparency and you don't have that trust with your constituents and with your residents, then you're going to you're not going to be the best you can be as a country, a city, or whatever. And that has always stuck with me: transparency and being available and being truthful. And so that book has influenced me. It's influenced my entire life. I've always been truthful. I've been honest. I answer my phone when people call. My door is always open when I was a city attorney, because our public deserves to know what we're doing as a government. We deserve to give them that right, and it's a responsibility of ours to carry that out.
Thank you, Cathy McCabe. And Jerome Rice, what is the last book you read that influences how you would wield public office?
The last book I read that would influence me. So it's one of the most influential books I read. I would take it. I have to cheat on this one. I read a book by Tony Dungy that truly changed my life about leadership, and he's a former head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Actually, a friend of mine worked with him, Darron Reynolds. I also read President Obama's book that truly changed America, I feel. And in the third book, really, I say I have to cheat on this, is the Bible. I'm truly led by the Bible in my faith. A lot of my decisions come from my faith and my love for people and my passion for this community. So I'll keep it short and sweet. Those three are very influential. Tony Dungy's, of course, President Obama, but the Bible would be my third, and I'm truly led by my faith in the decisions I make concerning Jerome Rice and his family, and Jerome Rice and decisions he makes on council, and the decision to even run for mayor.
Okay. Thanks to you both for answering all the questions this evening. We appreciate it so much. This evening, we've talked about a lot already, right? We've talked about equity, transportation, housing, gun violence, economic development, many. The city government can improve life for all the citizens now and into the future. We do have those 2-minute closing statements for each candidate, and they can fill that time or be as brief as they would like. The order of the closing statements came with another coin toss that we did earlier. Jerome Rice will kick us off with the closing statement first.
Well, friends, thank you for joining in. And again, the League of Women Voters, Upstate Action Alliance, West Side, NAACP, Siren, and Alianza Spartanburg, thank you for holding this forum tonight. Again, I'm Jerome Rice, guys. I've served on council for the past 12 years. I've been endorsed by the current mayor, Junie White. He wants me to have this seat, as well as I want to earn this seat from you all. My records speak for it. I'm accessible. I'm where I'm supposed to be. One thing I learned through athletics and on a college level takes a lot of your time. It's all about time management. It's all about time management. To say I'm going to hold office hours, I think that does a disservice to my constituents, because a lot of my constituents work 9 to 5. I'm going to hold everyday hours. I'm going to be a working mayor, a working class mayor. I mean, I talk to people at Walmart. I talk to people at ball games. I talk to people Sunday at church. So it's no days off. I mean, it's every day all in for this mayor seat and all in for Spartanburg. Athletics is a big part of my life. It has taught me a lot. It's taught me how to be a good teammate. It's how to be a good teammate. And I want to be a teammate to my council colleagues as well as the city staff. I didn't get a chance to mention that I have 4 granddaughters, and I talk about being a cheerleader. I talk with my boys about the sports, but my daughters were cheerleaders. I want to be the biggest cheerleader for Spartanburg. Guys, I talked about my faith, and one thing about my faith, neither Cathy nor I walk on water. We don't. There's only one person that did that walked on water. But I do think I'm the best swimmer in this case that's running for mayor. So again, vote November the 2nd, Jerome Rice for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. We're also going to move in now to Cathy McCabe's final.
McCabe.
Oh my gosh, I don't know where I'm getting that
I've
from.
known you forever.
I did it at the beginning and the end, Cathy. I am so
Thank you.
sorry. But Cathy McCabe is running. As you know, she has been your city attorney for a number of years, and now in retirement is coming back, trying to become mayor. So Cathy McCabe, your closing statement, please.
Well, I want to thank everybody again for putting on this forum, and thank you, Amy, and thank Jerome for being here, and thank you, the citizens, for watching this. I probably knocked on 1,000 doors and talked about my qualifications as having been city attorney, my qualifications as being involved in nonprofits and caring about my community and being passionate about my community. But one thing resonates with them over and over again, and that is that I would be an accessible, viable mayor, that I would hold office hours downtown. And yes, being city mayor would be a 24-hour job. And to that point, I have already, on all of my information, on all of my campaign information, I've already put my cell phone number. That's how viable I think that we need to have that communication, that touch. There are people that don't understand how Spartanburg is changing so fast. There are people that are afraid of that change. There are people that want a mayor that can be the face of their city. And yes, that is a 24-hour job. It is a job that I am willing to give up retirement for. It's a job that I think is necessary at this pivotal time in our history. We need somebody that can be available, whether it's going to the General Assembly, whether it's going to a neighborhood meeting, whether it's going to a store opening, whether it's just answering your telephone and having somebody there. And you know what? There are probably thousands of people that have my cell phone number and only 4 or 5 call, because what really matters is they know they have that number and they know that I have that ability to communicate with me. This government is supposed to be a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. I want to be that people's mayor. I want to be available. I want them to know that they can trust their government and they can believe that what we're doing for them is in their best interest and in our dear city's best interest.
Cathy McCabe, Jerome Rice, thank you both, candidates. And now I would like to introduce Ruth Stanton of the Spartanburg County League of Women Voters. She's going to wrap up the evening.
Well, good evening. I have the pleasure of representing the League of Women Voters, and I want to thank you so much, Amy, for moderating this forum. It's been a pleasure to work with you. And thanks to our candidates for being with us this evening. You made the night. And we also want to recognize our coalition members and New South, our excellent technology team working behind the scenes. And thank you for joining us, viewing audience. Before we end tonight, we wanted to be sure to provide you with voting information for the November 2nd election. One important note, for this election, absentee voting is only allowed for the situations that are delineated on the South Carolina elections website. It's not universal like it was our last election. And I'm going to pass this on to Natalia Valenzuela Swanson.
Thank you, Ruth. Good evening. I'm Natalia Valenzuela Swanson, and I'm representing Alianza Spartanburg. Buenas noches. Me llamo Natalia Valenzuela Swanson y represento a Alianza Spartanburg. Once again, many thanks to Amy Wood for facilitating this forum, and to our 2 candidates, Cathy McCabe and Jerome Rice. Una vez más, muchas gracias a Amy Wood, quien ha facilitado este foro, y a nuestros 2 candidatos, Cathy McCabe y Jerome Rice. Absentee in-person voting started October 4th and goes through until 5 o'clock the day before the election. It will be at the voter registration and elections office in the county building. Absentee voting is not for everyone this year, but only for specified causes. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Varner, and I'm representing the West Spartanburg branch NAACP. Absentee voting by mail started as early as the beginning of October. Absentee ballots by mail are accepted until 7 p.m. the day of the election, November 2nd. First, you will need to request an application to officially ask for an absentee ballot by mail. You can do this by phone, in person, or online. The voter registration and elections office will then mail you an absentee ballot by mail application. You may mail that in, or you may drop that off in person at the voter registration office. Then you will receive your actual absentee by mail ballot through the mail. Upon receiving your absentee by mail ballot, follow the directions for completing it and return by mail or by dropping off at the voter registration office. Remember, mailing it in can take up to 1 week. So please allow plenty of time if you plan to use the mail. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jason Spencer with Siren, the Spartanburg Initiative for Racial Equity Now. Just one more reminder that Election Day is Tuesday, November 2nd. It's the first Tuesday in November. Polls will be open for in-person absentee voting from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. And if you need any more information about the candidates, your polling location, the status of your registration, go to vote411.org. It's at the top of the screen, vote411.org. And if you haven't made a plan to how you're going to vote, when you're going to go, how you're going to get there, who you're going to go with, please take a minute and do that tonight. Put it on your calendar. It's easy to wake up on Election Day and not feel like it, or to get busy with work or other things. So if you make a plan, you're all the more likely to actually go and cast your ballot on Election Day, and that's what we want from everybody. We want to thank again our two candidates, Cathy, McCabe, and Jerome Rice, for taking their time tonight and for taking the time to just run for office, because it's not an easy job. And Amy, we wanted to thank you one more time. We couldn't have done it without you.
Well, thank you. It's exciting to be part of such an important night, because no matter what happens November the 2nd, Spartanburg is getting a new mayor. And we'll bring you the election results on election night. We hope you'll be watching on 7 News. I appreciate being included in this wonderful evening. And I thank the candidates once again for being here to answer the questions and try to give you the information you may be wondering about. Again, thank you all for participating, and have a great night.